Hey, it's Jordan with Status Coup. The New Hampshire primary is in the books. I won't get into the punditry on the Republican side, although it does seem Nikki Haley's quite delusional. And it seems Donald Trump, the more you watch him speak, losing it. But I want to get to the Democratic side, if you want to call that a primary last night. The results are here. Biden in the write-in campaign where he pretended he wasn't trying, but they actually spent quite a lot of money to try and win. He obviously won. It's still kind of tabulating as we speak, but as of now, there you go. He won in quite a landslide, 54%. It's going to end up being more than that. Dean Phillips, almost 20%. Marianne Williamson coming in far, far behind, less than 5%. But I want to address this CNN clip, which truly was mind-blowing gaslighting, where Van Jones seems to express, discontent with how the Democratic Party basically canceled and rigged their primary on the very network that helped them do so. Let's take a listen. We'll stop and start as we go.
It's so embarrassing and weird that we can't just have a normal primary. Look, I love South Carolina. I'm glad that South Carolina is going first. But there's something wrong in a party where you have this much discontent with the candidate and nobody can figure out a way to vote or do anything that counts or send a signal or send up a smoke signal, get a carrier pigeon, do something and listen to the fact that people in this party are very worried that Biden's not the right person. And so, and by the way, he can't give a speech now because his kids are so upset. In 1968, there was an unpopular war with very scary images and it mobilized a generation and it hurt Democrats in 68.
Well, that was the example that Dean Phillips chose to.
Exactly.
I mean, he thought he could be Eugene McCarthy.
In that, yeah.
I mean, there was an opportunity for a candidate other than Joe Biden to make moves here and for voters in New Hampshire to say, we want to see somebody different than Joe Biden. And Joe Biden won in a write-in by 3 to 1.
So that is a former communications director for Joe Biden. She was communications for his 2020 campaign and then was in the White House, Kate Bedingfield, I believe. She says, wait, there was an opportunity for candidates to make moves here and voters to have their say. Oh, was there? Because I don't recall Democratic primary debates where candidates for the Democratic primary or voters could hear from those candidates. I don't recall those debates happening where those candidates, Marianne Williamson, Dean Phillips, once upon a time, RFK Jr., could actually debate Joe Biden for voters in New Hampshire to weigh their options. Is that what you means, that candidates had the chance to make moves? I don't really recall CNN, MSNBC, any of the media really, ever covering Marianne Williamson extensively, other than to say she wasn't a credible or serious candidate. I remember them very last minute showering Dean Phillips with coverage, not so much serious coverage, basically suggesting he had a chance, but about, the betrayal of this congressman, not falling in line behind Biden and having the gall to challenge Biden. That was basically the coverage of Dean Phillips, not his campaign or what he's proposing, which frankly, I think he's a corporatist pretending to be progressive, but that's neither here or there. I don't remember this. So what is she talking about that these candidates had opportunity to make moves? CNN didn't give them that opportunity. Correct me if I'm wrong. Do you recall Marianne Williamson getting her own town hall on CNN, or Dean Phillips getting his own town hall on CNN, or MSNBC having either on? A lot of their viewers watch those channels vote in the New Hampshire primary and other primaries. I don't recall either. I remember Chris Christie getting a town hall on CNN when he was polling at about 1%. I remember Nikki Haley getting a town hall on CNN when she was polling much lower. Vivek getting town halls on CNN when he was polling lower than Marianne Williamson and Dean Phillips. Give me a break that they had an opportunity. And this isn't because I support Marianne Williamson or Dean Phillips. This is because I support democracy, which we do not have because we live in the United Corporations of America. Continue.
Do you feel good about it? Hold on. Did you feel good about the fact that these people who did go for Dean there's stuff that doesn't count anyway. There's no way for anybody in this party to register an effective, even protest vote because the DNC ziplocked this thing before anybody had a chance.
You don't think if there had been an unexpected level of support for Dean Phillips in this process today, that there would have been more of a reckoning? There was absolutely the opportunity for people to make their voice heard, but people want to see Joe Biden be the nominee. Joe Biden beat Donald Trump
what are you
in
saying
2020.
in terms of people not like what part of it makes you feel they were?
People want to see Joe Biden be the nominee. So all the polls from the last 6 months, including polls of Democratic voters, 60 to 70% saying they want a new candidate. That's people want to see Joe Biden be the nominee. And no disrespect to New Hampshire, it happens to be an older population. I'm not saying that's why Joe Biden won overwhelmingly, but I would also suggest most people in New Hampshire probably don't know much about Dean Phillips or Marianne Williamson. To be fair, Marianne Williamson did go across New Hampshire for months campaigning, but the problem is if you're not getting any media attention nationally, locally, most people get their information and news, particularly older voters, potentially more establishment, traditional Democratic voters. They get it from MSNBC, CNN, the New York Times, the Washington Post, local news in their area. Most people are not going out to watch the candidates in person. So most of them did not know anything about Marianne Williamson or Dean Phillips. Or if they did, they bought the spin and the gaslighting and the propaganda coming from CNN, MSNBC, the New York Times from the start. Oh, there's no credible candidates against Joe Biden. There's no serious candidates. Well, who gets to decide that? The voters or the media outlets from the start determining that they're not credible and they have no shot? That's not democracy. Let's continue.
Cut off from the process?
Well, the fact that, first of all, I think Dean Phillips begged everybody to run, begged Gavin to run, Gretchen to run. The people who were basically managing themselves for 2028 didn't want to run, so he had to kind of kamikaze himself. But the way that the DNC is operating is sending the signal that this is Joe Biden's party, perfectly fine, and that no dissent is welcome, and that's the message that's being received.
I think here's what I think.
The president, though, I mean, he is the head of the party. It is Joe Biden's party.
Right.
I mean, he's the head of the party.
Well,
now,
tell
you may not want to see him as the nominee, but
tell that
a lot of Democrats.
Tell that to all these young voters.
A lot of Democrats.
So it is Joe Biden's party, but I was told since 2016 that the DNC is neutral. So which one is it? It's not Joe Biden's party. It is Joe Biden's presidency. He's the president. He's entitled to debate. He's entitled a little bit of deference as president. He's entitled, he's got the bully pulpit of the presidency, so he could campaign from the White House every day if he wants. But he's not entitled to just by default advance to the general election. Nobody is. No Democrat incumbent and no Republican incumbent. And the media it's not the media's job to basically be the facilitator for that default advancement of Joe Biden to the general election. But the problem is the media is littered with campaign operatives who used to work for Joe Biden or Barack Obama or George W. Bush or Donald Trump. There's really no separation between journalists and the politicians and the swamp that surrounds those politicians. Now, I'm not saying it's slam dunk if all these national media outlets would have given Marianne Williamson, Dean Phillips, when he was running as a Democrat, RFK Jr. I'm not saying it's a slam dunk they would have upset Joe Biden in New Hampshire. But I am saying Bernie Sanders won New Hampshire in 2016 by a lot. Bernie Sanders won in 2020 in New Hampshire, not by a lot because there was like 10 candidates, but he still won. Marianne Williamson's message, I don't think she delivered it as well as Bernie Sanders, but was pretty much identical to Bernie Sanders. Why would people overwhelmingly in 2016 in New Hampshire vote for Bernie Sanders on the same policy platform as Marianne Williamson, but not give Marianne Williamson a shot? Maybe because They were told over and over again, she has no chance, not a serious candidate, and really never got to hear from her. Never saw a town hall with Marianne Williamson on CNN. Never saw Marianne Williamson being interviewed on CNN and MSNBC. And most importantly, never got to see the contrast between Marianne Williamson on a debate stage with Joe Biden for 2 hours. You think there might be some buyer's remorse if other candidates who are younger, more articulate, shall we say, more there, were able to debate Joe Biden? That's why the DNC rigged the primary. That's why CNN, MSNBC, and all the rest of them helped them rig the primary, because they knew if they allowed a real primary, it wouldn't be good for Joe Biden. I wouldn't be surprised if Joe Biden chooses not to debate Donald Trump, claiming, the insurrection and yada, 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 because I think he knows he would not fare well for an hour and a half, 2 hours, 3 times. Not that Donald Trump is so sharp, but at this moment, it's a race to the bottom. Donald Trump edges out Joe Biden by a hair, even though if you watch Trump, he's incoherent and not making a whole lot of sense. But it is unbelievable, the cognitive dissonance on CNN. And by the way, I'm not giving you points, Van Jones, for saying it after the fact that this whole thing was rigged. Why weren't you speaking up on CNN 6 months ago? You were on there as a guest over and over again. You didn't say a word about the DNC not holding a real primary. You didn't say a word about the DNC not actually, CNN not interviewing Marianne Williamson, Dean Phillips, RFK at the time, not giving them town halls. Nobody on that set did, because they're all in the tank for the corporate Democratic Party led by Joe Biden. Stunning cognitive dissonance and gaslighting. And by the way, if Joe Biden loses narrowly to Donald Trump, it will be because he lost a lot of young voters, black voters, and I think partly because a lot of those young voters, a lot of those black voters, a lot of those voters, period, that left Joe Biden, didn't vote for Trump, but just chose not to vote or vote third party. They were turned off not just by Joe Biden giving a blank check to Israel for genocide, but because Joe Biden and the Democratic Party canceled democracy.